Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. I'm back again for my final video today. Yeah, I've just kind of like watched back my review on Lover Louis XIV and it's not that great. I'm gonna say it, it's just, but I have this rule that I do it as one take and you know, it is what it is and all that lot, but my phone was buzzing like crazy and distracting me and I was getting confused and it's not good, so yeah, there we go. But anyway, just, you know, move, like, that's the thing with my videos, I do it as one take, I say what I say, I think what I think and all that lot, and then it's done. So yeah, it's done. So anyway, let's move on to my next review, which I promise will be better, and that is How to Be a Heroine by Samantha Ellis. Now I got this because I had fallen in love with Samantha Ellis's writing because of her book Take Courage about Anne Bronte, which I'd read a couple of years ago. I loved that book so much. I cannot, completely convey how much I adored that book, and you can find my review of it on this channel should you want to see. But anyway, Samantha is a playwright and she had written that book and then she had written this one. There are no other books that she has written. So yeah, so I've reached the point of the end of my journey, as it were, with Samantha until she writes her next book. Please, Samantha, write another book because I love your writing. But basically, this book, after she had written Take Courage, she was visiting Howarth and everything, where the Brontes were and that, with her friend, and she got into a debate with her friend about who's a better heroine, and her friend very much was Jane Eyre and she was very much Catherine Earnshaw from Wuthering Heights, and obviously Jane Eyre is Charlotte Bronte's heroine and Catherine Earnshaw is Emily Bronte's heroine. And her friend basically said, what was the point of Cathy getting married? Why would you celebrate her doing that when clearly it's the wrong thing to do and will completely mess up her husband's life? And it was something that Samantha hadn't thought about, and she's like, oh God, that's true. And then she started rereading all books from her childhood, which is what this covers, re-examining all the heroines as an adult with a completely different eye, as it were, and reassessing the heroines that made her who she is. And I just thought that was a really interesting concept, because it is true, if you look back at books that you grew up with, where that mean a lot to you, and then see them as an adult, you are going to see them in a different way. Like, very much like I have this thing about Little Women, and it's something that Samantha mentions as well, that when you read Little Women as a child, in such young adults, very much, they're four very individual characters, the four March sisters, and then but even though you might see their flaws, you don't really, you don't really see them, as it were. You fall in love with the story and and everything, or at least as I did as a teenager now. And then when you see them as adults, you really notice like how vain Amy is, how sickly sweet, as it were, and a kind of drab and really, in a way, you could argue, irritating that Beth is. How, Meg kind of, she really longs for, to be wealthy, as not as much as Amy, but how to get, because she remembers when they were wealthy before they became very poor and wanting that back again. And Jo, that her life is all about writing, and then she kind of abandons it at the end. It's like, well, so what was the point? She completely re-examined all of these different characters through the books that she read as a child and young adult, and as through the eyes of her adult self. And it's just wonderful to go on this journey with her. Now, I will say this though, It's not as good as Take Courage. Again, kind of like with Love and Louis XIV. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not as good. So yeah. So it did. I did feel that connection with Samantha. I followed her on this journey very happily. I loved finding out about her family and their background, and how they were a Jewish family in Iraq, and they left Iraq and moved to England, and her growing up in this community and such, and finding these books and from about families from all around the world who were of very different heritage from her, different religions and such, and how she connected to those characters. I found that fascinating, because it's kind of like how anybody who loves to read will have like book best friends and specific stories that they can say vividly. They can remember their first experience of it, of, you know, when they were younger, and I have that with various books. But to re-examine them as an adult with a real, you know, analytical view of them, that's very interesting to me. Now, the reason why I say that this is not as good as her previous book is kind of like with Love and Louis XIV, where I try to explain kind of rather badly that there is a lot of stuff going on in this book. This is only, I think, about 300 pages. Oh, hang on, sorry, getting muddled up. Yeah, it's only about 245 pages long, and she covers probably about 10 plus books. And when I say plus, it's because, you know, there are ones where she'll just randomly refer to in a paragraph, but there's probably about 10 that she really goes in depth with, to examine the characters and talk about them and everything. So there is a lot going on in this book. And so, yeah, it kind of, rather than just having the one focal point, which in her previous book was all about Anne Bronte. So, it kind of, like Love and Louis XIV, there's a lot of stuff going on. Some of these books I haven't read. Now, that's not, you know, oh my God, how could you have not read like a Doll's House, you know, stuff like that. But it was the reason why I feel that might have been a negative, is that because she's only got 255 pages, she's covering 10 books, she tells you like full plot stories of books very, very quickly, and then examines various characters within those books. But if I haven't read the book, one, the plot has kind of been spoiled, and two, I don't understand the characters to understand her jokes about them. So it's just kind of like, oh, okay, right, I kind of get it, but then at the same time I don't get it because I don't know who that person is. But for books that I have read, or stories, even though I may not have read but I know very well, so like Gone with the Wind, I haven't read the book, but I've adored the film version from the 1930s since I was a child. So I could like do the whole script pretty much off by heart. I watched it so many times. I really, really enjoyed those various chapters, but the chapters about books that I haven't read or know nothing about, I was a bit like, okay, okay, I'm following along what you're saying, but because I don't know the characters like you do, I don't know if I should be shocked by something. You know, should I be going, yeah, I get it, you know. So perhaps it would be better if I hadn't read this until I had read all the books that this is covering. I mean, you don't have to have read the books, but it's just, you know, getting those kind of like in jokes and everything. I would have, yeah, it would be better if I had read them all, but I didn't necessarily have to have read them all. So, you know. So that is one of the irks of it. And as I said, there is a lot of books thrown about here and spoilers and such. So that is another reason why I have a negative thing towards it. But those are the only negatives. So overall, to cover in depth about following your life, telling the stories of how these 10 books, about 10 books, completely impact you. Tell the entire plots of those books, talk about characters completely in depth, and do all that in 255 pages. That's pretty cool. So even though it comes second place behind Take Courage, it's not a bad read. It's just not her best. I think if she had had more breathing space, then it would have been it would have given time for the discussions about the book to breathe. She does give that space to breathe when she talks about her life and things that happened to her, and when these books came into her life and the impacts they made. She gives that breathing space, but when she actually discusses a book, it's very kind of quick fire, because she has to get through all of the plot and then talk about the characters and analyze and etc. in a very short space of time. So I have marked like multiple places to talk about various things. So let me just find one that's good. Oh no, that's Pride and Prejudice. Okay, so here's an example of Gone with the Wind. So she read Gone with the Wind when she was about 16 years old. And she found Scarlett very interesting, and she straight away she talks about at the very beginning of this chapter. Actually, I'll read the first bit. She says, "The first thing I remembered about Scarlett O'Hara is the measurement of her waist, a cool 17 inches. When I first read Gone with the Wind at 16, I raided my mum's sewing box for a tape measure and checked. My waist was 26 inches, 9 more than Scarlett's, and we were the same age. I started skipping breakfast and feeding my lunch to the ducks. I ate whole sticks of celery because of the negative calorie myth that eating it burnt more calories than what was contained in the celery itself. Later, I would decide dieting was for retro-sexists and give up celery in disgust. Later still, I discover it's actually quite delicious. Then I didn't know a 17-inch waist was impossible without luck, starvation, and aggressive corsetry. I didn't know even tiny Vivian Lee's waist was actually 22 inches. The damage was done. I had started worrying about what I looked like." So it was a very, impactful, because she was at that age of, feeling conscious about her looks and everything. But it's very interesting that when she goes back over it, that she realizes that Melanie, the character who Scarlett hates so much, because Scarlett is in love with a guy called Ashley Wilkes, and Melanie marries Ashley, and she hates Melanie for this, but their lives are constantly intertwined because Scarlett forces herself basically into their lives. She realised that in rereading that Melanie is the actual hero of the story, and so this is her talking about it. Scarlett is the opposite of nostalgic. She's fighting to survive. She looks forward, not back. She resents her friends and family. She sees them as burdens, but she doesn't shrink. She doesn't let them starve. When the Yankees are coming and everyone's fleeing Atlanta, she stays with Melanie, who's too pregnant to move. She delivers the baby herself. Only then does she ask Rhett for help. He's so overcome by her bravery that, having promised/threatened to kiss her, you need kissing badly by someone who knows how, he finally does. Mitchell's overheated prose make it clear he absolutely knows how, and he even admits that he loves her, but he's not going to fight at her side. He leaves her on a road to Tara, it's pronounced Tara in America, but it's spelled Tara, and goes to join the losing Confederate army. He's not immune to nostalgia, and besides, he knows that she can handle herself. This is where Scarlett's struggle really begins, and her ladyhood only gets in the way. She's never been out in the sun without a hat or a veil, never handled reins without gloves. She's always been clean and neat and protected. And now she's driving an old wagon, she's filthy and hungry, and she is responsible for keeping the others safe. She goes home to find her mother dead, her sisters ill, her father out of his mind, and Tara plunged by the Yankees. So when Mammy complains that Scarlett's blistered hands and sunburnt face are so unladylike, she doesn't listen. She can't afford to. You could tell the whole story had gone with the wind through Mitchell's descriptions of Scarlett's hands. They start out white and folded in her lap, and later, after she swears that she will never be hungry again, Ashley calls them the most beautiful hands I know because they are strong, and every callus is a medal, Scarlett. Every blister is an award for bravery and unselfishness. As she goes from spoilt belle to ruthless survivor, she finds her mother's advice increasingly irrelevant. Nothing she taught me is of any help to me. What good will kindness do me now? What value is gentleness? Better that I'd learned to plough or chop cotton like a darky. Oh, mother, you were wrong. She does chop cotton and works the fields. She even kills a Yankee soldier. But although Scarlett commits the murder, it's only now that I notice how brave Melanie is in the scene. Weak from childbirth, she appears at the top of the stairs in a ragged chemise, carrying a sabre. She can barely lift it, but wow! Even Scarlett grudgingly admits that Melanie may be soft on the surface, but underneath, she is steel. It's Melanie's idea to go through the dead man's pockets for money, the money that saves them from starving. And when Melanie covers up the murder, Scarlett frankly admires the cool way that she lies under pressure. So why did I miss Melanie's heroism? Why did I even dislike a woman who talks books instead of battering her lashes? I think I was scared that I was much too like her. I didn't want to be long-suffering or to love a man who's always flirting with someone else, because forget Scarlett being no lady, Ashley is no gentleman. Why does he tell Scarlett that he cares for her but they're just too different? He's engaged. He shouldn't say he cares about her at all. So why does he keep taking Scarlett into his arms and kissing her when he's married and he knows that she loves him? Why does he bang on about honour when he's being dishonourable? He's pathetic. He's so bad at farming and so hopeless at business that Scarlett is driven to try to sell herself to Rhett, even though she hates him for leaving her, just to get money to keep her many dependents alive. So there we go. That was just a sample of her writing and such, and how I said, she has to be very quick and very succinct. But I just as with Take Courage, I love how much of herself she pours into her writing. I truly feel connected to Samantha. I totally understand where she's coming from, and she's completely brutal in her analysis. She doesn't like say things softly. Like she said, Ashley, she completely ripped him apart there, but he needs to be ripped apart because he's really dishonorable. He's not a good guy, but Scarlett adores him so much. I had this kind of weird struggle with this book because as I said, for chapters where I knew the story well and I was like, yeah, I get it. But then for the books that I haven't read, that I don't know, I just felt kind of a bit awkward through it because it was so quick. I'm like, I don't quite understand why your criticism is the way it is of certain characters, because I don't know them. So it's one of these books where it is well written, it's well structured. I totally get how speedily she's being with it, but because there are books that I haven't read and characters I don't know, those sections were kind of a bit tough for me. So perhaps it's probably one of these books where it's better that if you've read all of the books that she is talking to, for you to then read. But I felt, really comfortable reading it. As always, I really love Samantha's writing and her honesty and her openness about her life and everything to the reader. It was very inviting. It was very warm. Her personality just flows through. It was just those few little irks with books that I haven't read before that put it in second place to Take Courage. but overall, I enjoyed it. There was a lot going on in this book, but I can't deny I enjoyed it, despite parts that I didn't quite get. So, for, a non-fiction book full of personality, full of joy, full of life, full of nostalgia that made me think about my childhood and everything, and the books that made me, it was great. Yeah. I need to read all of the other books and then reread this. I think that's probably a good idea. So, those are my thoughts on How to Be a Heroine by Samantha Ellis. So, my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yes, but I do want to read the other books that I haven't read in here and then reread it. So then I got more of an understanding of the characters and everything in the books that I haven't read before. Haven't read at this point. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I definitely would. But I would flag about how quick and succinct it is and everything, and about possibly reading through all the other books, all the books that I mentioned. Would I read any more of not Anne's work? Why did I say Anne? Any more of Samantha's work? Yes, I definitely would. She's a playwright, as I said. This is her second book, and I've read both of her books now. I would love if she wrote more books. But yeah, I definitely would keep an eye on Samantha Ellis's future publications. So there we go. So those are my thoughts on How to Be a Heroine by Samantha Ellis. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below. You can thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I will be back with my review of my next read, which I have announced in my announcement video published earlier today. So yeah, I'll be back when I'm done reading that. All right, guys.